Hi, I'm Avalon Starlight, and you are listening to the Rebel Unicorns podcast. This season, we are diving deep into what being an empath in business actually looks like. Listen each week as I share tips and tricks to master your empath energy, as well as sharing incredible guests who have created successful businesses by claiming their empath title. Are you ready? Let's get our rebel on. All right, magical humans and rebel unicorns. Today I have an ultra special guest. This is someone who the universe literally took us from two different poles of the universe, two different poles of the world, and said, you guys have to come together and create magic, to create like changes, to shift the vibrational frequency of the earth. You guys have big work to do, and we're going to clash, you guys. Like it's when I say clash, I don't mean like a gentle nudge. It was like cosmic. When I met this human, I literally felt ripples of energy around me shift that traveled across the globe. I am getting shivers just saying this. So I'm so excited to introduce you to my new cosmic friend and life global changer, Mary Bratko.
Oh my gosh.
Podcast.
Just listening to that introduction, I was like, yeah, I feel it.
Right? Can you share what you just said before I started the podcast?
About that this is my first podcast ever?
Yeah.
I thought that made me sound super bitchy. No, I've been approached for them in the past and just never really felt, it felt like a marketing ploy, and it didn't feel right. It didn't align. And so I've always said no, always. This might be the first podcast I will ever actually watch. I don't think I've ever listened to a podcast ever. Certainly never watched. So this is my first one ever. And then it's the Rebel Unicorn. Like how can I not? Like, it's just the biggest honor ever.
Well, why is Rebel Unicorns a big deal?
Oh, well, I mean, unicorn anything is a big deal for me. Did I tell you about the time that I bought a life-size, like a 3-foot stuffed unicorn in Bangkok, and I traveled around Southeast Asia and actually through India with this unicorn as well? Like, there are pictures of me on an airplane with this massive unicorn sitting on the airplane seat next to me. Anything that allows me to stand out from those around me, unicorns have always been that symbol for me. I've always identified with being different from the rest. And it was the moment that I realized that that's okay, that I began to step into my own. And then you're not even just about the unicorns, you're about the rebel unicorns. Like, you have taken it literally to the next level of being different from everybody else. You are now like the antithesis to just the being different. And I mean, I'm not often in the company of somebody who is even more rebel unicorn than I am. And I met her when the universe collided us, because it had we had to meet. And so just sharing space with you is magic.
Agreed. And I just think every time that we get to come in contact with each other, there's even more that is happening where we can't even see it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, where it doesn't even exist yet. Like, it's creation, it's possibility, it was already, I feel like every time I meet you, then these timelines that already existed between us just start like zapping into place. It's like, oh yeah, there it is. So for those listening, Mary, which unicorn house do you fall into?
I'm the cosmic unicorn. Is that accurate? Is that correct? I mean, no. I feel like it shouldn't. I've never been given a descriptor of my unicorn type before. So the fact that I even went down that path with you was exciting for me. I feel like all these labels are coming sort of out of thin air, out of my surroundings to start to give me context. I mean, you know a little bit about my life circumstance right now, and the fact that I'm like 25,000 kilometers displaced from what I've always ever known. So I've just been looking for pieces of myself. And then, I mean, meeting you, we come from the same like original stomping grounds. And it almost feels like we know enough of the same people that we were always meant to realign. And the fact that you've shown up and given me new elements of identity and context to add into who I am right now is just the universe saying, like, you were always meant to align. You were always meant to connect.
Well, because so we are both originated in Ontario, Canada,
Yeah.
which neither of us live in anymore.
Nope.
So where do you have yourself situated now?
So I'm going to use the word trapped in Eastern Europe. So I'm in Krakow, Poland, which is actually the birthplace of my dad. Poland, my parents are from originally, but they escaped back in communist times, escaped to Canada. I was born there. And I graduated university in Southern Ontario, started traveling around the world and really looking to find myself globally, threw myself into the most difficult countries on the planet as a solo female traveler, which is just a complete, can I swear on this podcast?
Oh, fucking right, you can.
Okay. So it was a complete mind fuck to end up in parts of the globe that were so different from all I'd ever known. Like, I came from the land of like bench t-shirts and Tiffany bracelets to like, temples in Cambodia and like dirty streets of India. And it changes you at a molecular level. So I traveled and I knew I wanted to leave Southern Ontario, Toronto, Niagara, and I wanted to be abroad in whatever form that took. And then when my partner and I left Canada, we found out we were 10 weeks pregnant with twins. And we were like, whoa, okay, that changes our plans slightly. So we stopped off in Poland just because my parents were here and we wanted to give them a chance to experience grandparenting. Settled for a second and then lockdown. And now it's really difficult to travel anywhere on top of doing that with two tiny humans. So I'm currently trapped in Poland, which has been an adjustment. I get that there's no accidents to understand this context of where I came from, really, which is so much of the work that you and I seem to be on the path of, is like looking at the framework that we came from, transposing it into something powerful.
And there's so much more like to unearth in that simple story that you just said, because there's so much self in those words, right? Like,
I feel somebody brilliant said to me yesterday, the younger we are when we realize the world is not safe, the harder we work to understand ourselves. Because as soon as you can understand yourself, you can navigate yourself in this unsafe world. So I joke that, anybody with a trauma past ends up with like multiple degrees in psychology and neuroscience and like writes theses on, romantic relationships and perfectionism or narcissistic personality disorder or whatever. Like, the earlier that we struggle, the harder and longer we spend working on figuring out why. And then when you meet others who've been figuring out that why for a long time, that's when the magic happens, because now you're on the same plane. Now you realize, like, we are just this tiny little piece of something so much bigger. And you want to know more about that bigger, and I want to know more about that bigger. And then like your bigger meets my bigger, and then like supernovas explode around us. The rebel unicorns.
so true. Well, and I mean, because you kind of touched on the fact that you and I both came from traumatic upbringings, from traumatic childhoods. Going into that a little bit, were you sensitive to energy and emotions when you were a kid? Would you say that you were an empath? Would you say that you just have empathy? Which one would most define you?
So I was preparing for this topic and just trying to think about who it was recently who said to me that your ability to be an empath has to do with recognizing somebody else's struggle. Was that you who said that to me on our first chat? So I don't remember who it was, but she said to me that an empath really comes down to you yourself have gone through so much that you have this acute ability to recognize the struggle in somebody else. I come from a neuroscience background. Like I come from sort of the space of medicine and psychiatry and neuropsychobiology, like a really chemical driven experience of the world. And it wasn't until I moved away from academe and started looking at discovering who I am that I realized there's this deeply rooted intuitive nature in me. I ended up in parts of the world that are like allegedly geomagnetically charged differently. And all of a sudden, that's when I started meeting people who became my role models, people who, women who celebrated the cycles of the moon, women who had come in contact with their bodies, their divine feminine. They were this beautiful, harmonious balance of masculine and feminine energy, like really powerful Western world successful, like, anesthesiologists and art therapists and people who by definition were really successful on paper, but then had this powerful, witchy, earthy, pagan, empath, intuitive vibe. And I just like, tell me more. Like, I wanted to know everything about what they had learned. And then it wasn't so much that I learned it, but it's like I rediscovered it. It's like they made it okay to sense things and feel things and make decisions based on an inner guide rather than on logistics and formulas and framework and statistics. Like, that didn't suit me. And I could feel it didn't suit me, but nobody made it okay to be intuitive, to be feminine, to be soft, I'm still learning what that means.
This is a powerful conversation because I've been reading a lot and listening a lot as I'm recording the empath. Of course, Spirit's like, here, look at this, here, read this, here, look, I'm going to send you this. It's all has to do with empaths. And I'm going to pull on your neuroscientific background here, because a lot of people will state that being an empath or being able to feel others' emotions, and not just from a hypervigilance, I came from, a place where I needed to protect myself, but that empaths are formed through traumatic experiences because of the fact that we had to protect ourselves so specifically in a way that we had to attune ourselves to, our childhood, our parents, or the people who were abusive to us, or whatever the trauma was.
Yeah. To threat of any sort.
A threat of any sort. And is that what comes up in academia when these types of conversations come up about empaths?
So neuroscience, when I was finishing my degrees was still very much, there wasn't a ton of space for the spiritual side. So that I feel like that sort of evolution, that new age coexistence of consciousness and mind has just started to evolve. Positive psychology was just starting to round onto mainstream space when I was leaving university. So it's a new subject. And I think that, our generation is starting to demand it. So we were raised to believe that the struggles, the traumas were normal. They were normalized, and they're not normal. They're not okay. Our parents raised us in a context of their own trauma. My parents came from communist Poland. My dad was born at the tail end of World War II. They come from a way different space. They're much older. And they normalized their suppression of emotion, their suppression of like an intrinsic motivation, or like it really, you take on that learned helplessness because that's all you know. And then this daughter of Polish parents, I was born in Canada in a context that's warm and safe and gentle. And by the time I realized that I had a traumatic childhood, I had guidance counselors and social workers, and I had all these external supports that said, here, like, share your story with us. You're safe here. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you're like, what do you mean I'm safe here? Like, you mean you'll listen to me and you'll believe me and you'll support me and you won't judge me and there's no danger? But when you have those early formative years, the neuroscience is really based on your brain creates the shortest physiological neuronal connections between a memory and your fight or flight response. So this memory made me feel threatened. This space, this person, this smell, this conversation, this physical sensation threatened my sense of safety. The shortest connection to run away or fight. And that's when you get into children and then adults children who become adults, who the stimulus is no longer there, but those neuronal connections still exist. And we are constantly in a state of panic, of fear, of loss. It takes a really long time. Okay, so I will say from a neuroscientist perspective, it is absolutely possible to undo those neuronal connections and recreate them. The brain stays plastic, malleable, changeable our entire lives. It's just really fucking hard. Like, it's hard to face those demons. It's hard to do that shadow work and to just step into the light and say, this was how my brain adjusted to the reality that I was living. But I'm safe now. That reality is different. I choose for myself. And you can rewire your brain.
Yeah, and this is such an important conversation because I believe too that this is an unwinding, right? Like an unraveling. If you look at a spool of yarn, I mean, you don't just take this ball and make it a thread in one sitting. It takes time and it takes energy. It's like, for me, even because I grew up around the mental illness, that was my trauma. And there's no blame, there's no shame, there's no resentment, there's no guilt on my family. Like, that's the piece that I think people don't understand either, is that your parents were your parents. They were doing the best that they possibly could with what they knew, having experienced their life up until that moment in time, as did mine. And both of our parents, in completely different forms or way, repressed emotions.
Yeah.
Modeled that feeling created, for my family, feelings were bad. Like, they medicated to not feel.
Yeah.
Like, that's how we dealt. If you were feeling sad, you should probably medicate. Like, anything that was in any form outside of this neutral energy. We're not too happy, because if you're too happy, shit can happen and you're going to lose it. So don't let yourself be too happy, and don't let yourself get too sad, because if you get sad, you're never going to get out. You're going to just like stay in the sadness, and you will be locked and loaded in there for the rest of your life. So when we get to this place, and I love the fight or flight conversation, because even for me, saying I love you could have caused sadness in my family. I had no idea what the trigger was going to be.
Wow.
Right? And so there was constantly a state. And I'm saying this for those that are listening who have been following my story, and Mary, you can share a little bit about this after, is that I've moved across the country, and I've been in the spiritual world now for 5-6 years. And I still have to focus my attention on relaxing my body, because its natural state is tension.
Yeah. I just started reading Sarah Wilson's First We Make the Beast Beautiful, a book on anxiety. So a reflective writing coach suggested it to me. I didn't realize that how I feel anxious is not normal. I had no idea. I was like, I don't have anxiety. I'll read it because she suggested it to me. I don't have anxiety. I closed the book halfway through, and I was like, holy shit. People don't go to bed with like chest crushing inability to breathe because they didn't accomplish enough in the day. What? That's not normal. I had no idea, because we over glorify busy, because we over glorify stress. We live in this rhetoric of you're supposed to constantly be doing, and because I do things, I accomplish things. And because I accomplish things, everyone just pats me on the back and they're like, oh, you did really well. So it like speaks to my type A perfectionism that like just wants to make everyone love me by succeeding at the cost of what? Like at the cost of literally my will to live. That's not normal. And there's just not enough conversation, I think, around that. Even the unraveling, like it's just such a beautiful example. Like you have to start somewhere. You have to realize things are knotted up to begin with. If you don't realize they're knotted, what is there to unravel? And then you start to look for, and this is sort of where being an empath comes in, is you start to be hyper emotionally, intelligently aware of stimuli in your life that will help you unravel. And you stop feeling frazzled and afraid and alone, and you set aside that fight or flight, like you thank it for protecting you when you needed it. But then you realize there's a lot of really powerful people in the world who've gone through their journey, who've stabilized their footing, and you know what they're saying? I'm here to help. Like, I'm here to help you unravel. Like, let's take this massive spool of yarn and like sit with it for a second. And then we slowly start, teasing it apart. And I think that's where I got to, particularly with this most recent chapter of our birth story, which was just so unexpected and so difficult that I, as a new mom, was like, what in the fuck did I just do with my life? I don't have a guidebook for this. Like, I thought I dealt with my childhood trauma. Why is it resurfacing? Why do I have to face these feelings again? You know, I don't even like moms. How do I? Because I had never formed a community. Like,
we need to rewind because that's again another like, what? So I'm going to take the storyline back to when you left Canada and you were 10 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
You and your husband
Yeah.
were consciously working on having a baby. You guys had actually, so tell a little bit about that story and then we can get into the unraveling. But I'm like, there's a beautiful like lead in here where it doesn't matter how conscious we are.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we will experience the experience we're meant to experience.
I love that sentence. And it's just so timely right now because literally this morning, you know, my last couple of Instagram posts, I write very transparently about my struggle. And it's like we've normalized struggling about a lot of aspects of life, mental health. I think you're going to hear the tiny humans being put to bed, their nurseries behind this wall.
It's perfect. It's a perfect segue. And
like a 30% chance they'll open the door if they hear me speaking. Anyways, we've normalized talking about childhood sexual abuse. We've normalized talking about eating disorders, depression, anxiety. What we haven't normalized is talking about the maternal struggle. And I say that because I did my research and it wasn't out there. And that's why I felt so blindsided by parenting because I was like, well, anyone can have a kid. So mine and Mark's story, we met by accident online. I was traveling in Europe and he was back in Toronto, off work for a couple of weeks. So he decided to try digital dating back like 7 years ago when people actually exchanged messages. So none of this like swipe right and let's meet stuff. Like actually we wrote to each other. We met, decided very early on, we wanted a very conscious relationship. We didn't want a relationship at all. We wanted a very conscious connection. So we didn't want to date exclusively. We wanted to continue being able to learn who we are by dating other people. Got to a point where we asked each other the question, like, do you want to hear about the person that I met last night? And he'd be like, okay, tell me. And then I would hear about and all of a sudden we realized maybe 6 months in, crap, I think this is called an open relationship. Like, let's Google that and let's figure out what that means. So we realized that we were non-monogamous from day one, ethically, consciously non-monogamous, which we feel is what contributed to the relationship that we have now. Mark quit his full-time corporate job. We started traveling the world together, building businesses, pursuing our dreams, basically turning everything that we loved into an income. That's what I did for a decade. And then I taught him to do it as well. Everything we did was on purpose. We lived on a tiny island in Thailand on purpose. We lived in Bali on purpose. We traveled the hardest countries in the world together on purpose. Everything we did was on purpose. And then the social message of like, hey, you guys should have a baby. And we were always, no, like babies are stupid. We're not going to have babies. Like babies just ruin your life. Like no one's happy with a baby. But then this like niggly, like, you know, Mary, Mark's a few years younger than you. He's got time, but like, oh, you know, the biological, like just these subtle messages from outside. And I was vehemently opposed to children. Oh, this story. And then we were like, you know what? We've done a lot of hard things. We've built a lot of really beautiful businesses. We've literally traveled the world. We're not missing anything. We continue to have this consciously non-monogamous relationship. We love the bonds that we make with other people along our way. Yeah, okay, let's make a kid. For a few biological reasons, we ended up at a fertility clinic in Toronto, and she was like, you know what, you guys actually qualify for government funding for IVF. We're just going to push you right through. And like, lo and behold, I was going through like the hormone treatments for egg retrieval. And I was like, okay, I had no idea. Like, how do you retrieve eggs? I thought I just like laid under a heat lamp and they would just fall out of me. That's not how it goes. Like egg retrieval was horrific and IVF was horrific. But we kept saying like, okay, like we're going to do this thing that like people really love doing. People love making babies.
Can I ask?
And then we found out we were, But yeah.
Was it not possible naturally?
So it could have been. I had some pretty wacky cycles from never having taken care of my hormonal health. You know what I didn't want? I didn't want to try. We had developed such a strong, conscious, intimate life connection. I was afraid of trying and potentially ruining the natural vibe that we had created intimately, sexually. I really honored that. And I was afraid to try and rock the boat. So when the universe handed us this IVF opportunity, particularly the funding, which we never expected and would never have been able to pay for it otherwise, it just seemed like everything was falling in line. And okay, like we're going to be brave and we're going to do this. So we did our first IVF transfer with 2 embryos, and it failed completely. Like zero, nothing happened. And I was pretty busted up, but not because the pregnancy didn't take, but because I had failed at something. I had failed at something I had no control over. So like my perfectionism was starting to pop up there. So we did another cycle back to back, and those 2 embryos took. So like 5 days later, I peed on a stick. We flew to Mexico overnight because I was like, the best place for my mental health right now is eating like large amounts of guacamole on a beach in Cancun. So that's what we did. And that's where I found out I was pregnant. And we just sold our condos in Toronto. We just sold our cars. We just sold everything that we owned. And we were going to go travel full time. And then we're pregnant with twins. And we were heading to our little island in Thailand. And Mark was like, there's like barely a doctor there. Like, this is the only time you plan on ever being pregnant. Should we maybe like not go to an island that requires like 2 boats, a train, and a plane to get to? Like, should we stay maybe more civil? So we stopped in Poland and then stayed here. I mean, I would love to say nothing good came of it. Obviously, some good has come of it, present company included, but that was the only not conscious choice we made. Yeah. Sometimes things happen.
Yeah, was to be in Poland as long as you have. This is the piece.
Yeah.
So this is where I think it's most potent and powerful to recognize that, you know, the universe, really, we think we're in charge. We really do.
It's hilarious, right? Yeah.
And the universe is like, no. You want to find yourself, Mary? Do you really want to find yourself? That's what you've been asking. That's what you've been praying for. That's what you've put out. That's your order. Is this true?
It won't be on an island in Thailand.
Like, let's be real. That's an easy way to just chill out and like support your energetic being. But there's no contrast. There's no like.
There was no contrast. Life was a party. Life was, my Instagram was the most enviable, brag-worthy digital nomad lifestyle that anybody would have wished for. We worked from our computers on beaches with cocktails in our hands. Like it was a dream. It was a dream. And we still wanted more because we're greedy little fucking humans who wanted more than what we had. And you know what? No. We had a really close connection with Mark's parents, and they have such a beautiful long-term bond. They have a great relationship with us as adult kids. We wanted that. We wanted to make an investment in something longer term. I understand why people have children. Like the logic is not lost on me. It's the process in between of like conception to when they're 30 that I like, nobody signs up for that. Like, why does that seem like a good idea?
So, you know, this is really impactful for me because I have very tumultuous parenting in my life. Like I've had 2 children. They're both high needs. They're both incredible. They're both my greatest teachers in my lesson. I don't understand when people, you told this story, hand you a baby and you're like, yeah, that's a thing. Did this baby just, I'm supposed to love it? Like it just, like I just met you. Like, how am I supposed to love something I just met? I don't understand this, right? Yeah. But nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the fact that when you have a baby and then you think that you're done, and then they're massaging your stomach and they're like, no, 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 honey, you have to, first they stick a needle in your leg, which I wasn't expecting, which I actually slapped the nurse because I was like, what the fuck? Nobody told me I got a needle. And then they're like, oh, you have to birth a placenta. And you're like, but I did my work. Like, I'm done. What are you talking about? There's more. This is ridiculous. But like, I want to share, because this is the part of your story where I believe that the universe stepped in and said, now you discover yourself.
I'm open only because I respect the shit out of you. I'm open. Where? Tell me where.
When what you were able to create in your mind as being the way that things went, no longer existed.
By the longest shot imaginable. Like, can you hear them crying next door? I'm sorry. It's bedtime in Poland. Avalon, it wasn't just like a few things went sideways. I did my research. I spoke to doulas. I found the world's leading twin birth midwife from Belize. And I literally was looking at booking her flights to Poland to come and stay with me for my last month of pregnancy, so that when I went into labor, she would be there and I could birth at home in our tiny little apartment next to the castle in Krakow, in a tub on my living room floor, surrounded by candles. Like, I did my research. I thought I did my research. Like, I'm an academic and I'm resourceful and I have access to information that I'm going to fully use. Nothing fucking prepared me. Nothing. Nobody explained to me. I mean, I hate to like blame it on the patriarchy, but like, the male stronghold on medicine in a country like Poland is no joke. So like 70% of twins are still born vaginally in Canada. I didn't realize I'd have to fight with doctors for permission to birth my children naturally. I didn't realize I would have to have that discussion. Like, I didn't think you decided for me. I thought I decided for myself how humans exit my body. That wasn't the case. And I was ridiculed, and I was laughed at of doctors' offices saying like, you're just signing their death certificate if you choose to birth naturally. Like, I had to fight. And that was sort of when like this country began to slowly whittle me down, because what I had really developed as this like empowered vision of how I was going to become a mother didn't happen. And what I actually learned instead was, as a woman, your body is unsafe, your body is unpredictable, your pregnancy is unsafe, your twins are pathological, like, you have elevated blood pressure and you need to be hospitalized and you're going to die and your babies are going to die, and we're here to swoop in and save you. That was the message. We're here to swoop in and we're going to save you from, yourself. My background's in medicine, so I fought really hard, but like, for anyone who's been 9 months pregnant with 2 humans in their body, like, you're exhausted. And at one point I just remember being like, okay, like, let's go in for the induction. Let's give it a try. Like, I'm strong. I can fight through this. But I went in fight or flight. You know what the opposite is of oxytocin that you need to birth a baby? Fucking adrenaline. Like your fight or flight, your cortisols, your adrenalines, like, they are not going to birth a baby, or 2 for that matter. So it's just a train wreck. It was a train wreck. The fact that they came out okay is like a miracle. I almost died. Like, I never thought there was a chance that I would be a maternal death statistic. But I bled out to basically like as low levels as a human can survive with. And like, I was unconscious for when they finally came. It was like, when they handed me the babies, how do you realize that you're a mother when you were unconscious when they came out of your body? Here, do you want to breastfeed them now? Are you kidding me? Like, I can't stand up without falling over. And you want me to do what? With my nipples? No. It was crazy. But nobody saw the signs, because we don't have these conversations. They're here. They're healthy. You're alive. Your heart's still beating. Like, blood transfusion, you're fine. Here, start counting their poops. What? Like, I was on so much morphine. I was having like suicidal hallucinations. Like, I would close my eyes and see myself like jumping off of cliffs or jumping in front of traffic. Like, that was morphine. That's not a normal way to start parenting. But nobody steps in. Nobody talks. Nobody asks, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How do you feel about going home with them? Nobody talks about that. So that's why motherhood, like we need to start having these conversations. That's like the bit, to use your word, contrast, like that was the beginning of my journey compared to like my orgasmic hippie birth in my pool surrounded by candles on my living room floor with my midwife from Belize, because that's what was supposed to happen. Yeah.
And how old are the twins now?
2.5.
And how long was it after their birth that you were struggling at the intense level of questioning your life?
How long after their birth? Like, okay, no, I was going to say 10 seconds, but I didn't actually, looking back, I didn't actually realize how bad it was until about 4 months postpartum. So sleep deprivation. Mark has a sleep condition that requires him to sleep through the night. He cannot wake up suddenly. It didn't occur to us. Nobody talked to us. Nobody said like, twins require a lot of not sleeping. You should probably hire a night nanny. Nobody had that conversation. So I was like, oh no, it's fine. Like I'm strong. I can wake up to the twins. I can stay awake with them all night. But we didn't expect that I had bled out completely and was violently anemic and just not physically well. I needed to sleep. So I lasted about 4 months and we still traveled. Like the twins were 8 weeks old. We drove to Croatia. They were 2 months old and we flew to Vienna for a while. We went to Spain with them. We flew to Canada, flew to Bermuda. We traveled. We tried to live as normal a life with them as possible. And about 4 months postpartum, I mean, things were hard. I started to, because my background's in mental health, I was able to see like slightly psychotic thoughts entering my brain. So I would just get up and do like jumping jacks until I collapsed to try and like change my brain chemistry. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't like, everyone just sees photos of how cute they are and like everyone loves twins. And I was so violently alone one night. It was in Canada. I got in the car in the middle of the night. I went to Mark. I didn't care that I was waking him up. I went to Mark. I said, I'm leaving. Like, take care of them. Got in the car, drove myself to an emergency room, like crawled in and just said, like, medicate me, sedate me, tranquilize me, like just put me out of my misery. Like, I can't, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And the doctor was like, okay, well, let's draw some blood and talk. And he's like, when was the last time you slept a full night? Like 8 hours. 7.5 months pregnant, like literally 5-6 months ago. He's like, your organs are failing. Like nothing is functioning. Do you see this report? Like nothing is working in your body. Like you're dying. You're so sleep deprived. Your body's going to fail. You don't need medication. You have to go home and get a night nanny and sleep. Nobody talks about that. Nobody, like the mom is expected to just die on the sword, like fall on the sword for everybody because she's the mom. And like, you have twins, you're so lucky. Like, look how cute they are. Look how cute they look on a beach in Bermuda. You're fine. You're fine. That was the messaging I got. You're fine. I was so talking about being a business owner. I was so convinced that I still had to prove to my investors and my shareholders and my followers that I was working, that I have these photos that just crush me today. But like, this tiny little 36-week-old newborn head on my chest, and I'm sitting with a laptop working. That was the messaging I got. I have to keep working. I have to keep building something, existing. Yeah, there was no messaging around like, are you okay? So then I had to pivot my company. What's that?
Is the mom okay?
Yeah. No, nobody. Because she posts nice photos. So I'm going to like her photo and be like, so cute, exclamation mark with a little heart. And then I've done my job. No, that's not how it works.
So the moment where, what were you doing prior to what you're doing now? And what was the moment of realization that this had to change?
You mean work-wise, yeah?
Yeah.
With our company?
Yeah.
So I've been a serial entrepreneur since I left university, since I left that sort of medical space, and just a solopreneur. So different ways of making money, doing something on my own. I realized at one point, I'm really passionate about lubricating the way women believe that they can earn money themselves, doing what they love, usually online, It gave me an amazing lifestyle. It gave me freedom, gave me the ability to move around the world. How can I create something that allows women to do that on a large scale? I was in a taxi cab in Manila, and this cab driver was just gushing about Uber, how Uber had changed his life, how it had given him freedom and flexibility, and he could work on his own schedule, and it was magic. And I was like, Uber, hey? Why doesn't anyone build tech for women? Like, why is there no tech platform that lets women do what they love on their own schedule that doesn't require driving a car in the middle of the night? So I went back to Mark and I was like, well, a lot of women do hair and makeup. Let's build Canada's first on-demand mobile beauty app. That was our tagline. So we did. So we were not tech founders by any means, but we did. We built an app for anybody, whether they were educated in beauty or just really passionate and talented in it, to be able to create a profile and offer hair and makeup services locally, one-on-one hair and makeup, obviously, pre-COVID life. And I mean, we fumbled our way through launch and we saw some pretty great traction. And it was funny, one friend in Canada said to me, Mary, you don't even like hair and makeup. Like, this seems really misaligned. Like, you don't give a shit about your hair and makeup. Like, why beauty? And I just wanted a very female centric space. That was all that I was led by. But I never forgot what she said to me, like, why beauty? And then we had the twins. We were still running Pretty Bird at the time. That's what I was working on that computer with like my baby boy's head on my chest. And I so desperately needed healing in whatever form that took. I knew I needed healing. So Skyscanner and Rumor are my two travel apps, like my two go-to. Like, if you want to go somewhere cheap, you use Skyscanner and you use Rumor. I found a crazy cheap flight to London, UK, and a crazy cheap hotel room in London, which never happens. And I just typed in healing London, like, universe, tell me what do I need? Who am I meant to meet? I ended up meeting, so I went to a place called Soul Space in London. The owner, Hannah, very similar vibe to you, very ethereal and open and intuitive and empath and powerful as hell. Her business showed up and she offered this whole like goddess afternoon. She had a midwife visiting her, a doula visiting her from New York. She was like, the three of us will get together. Like, we'll just hold space for you. And I was like, yes, like, just hold space for me. And I wasn't into the spiritual stuff. I wasn't into the witchy stuff. I didn't know about half of the like Koshi bells and everything that she used on me that day. I had no idea. Like, my first tarot reading, I had no idea, but I felt good. Like, I felt safe. I felt help. The candles, the crystals, the moon oracle deck, it was really out there for me, but it felt really safe. And I was on the train back to Stansted and I texted Mark and I was like, we have to pivot Pretty Bird. Because one of the things that Hannah had said to me was, there's no marketing space for people like us. We're not mainstream enough. Like, massage therapists are mainstream, makeup artists are mainstream, yoga instructors mainstream. But there's no space for alternative. There's no space for witchy or spiritual or intuitive or empathic. I was like, there should be, because I feel amazing. Why can't more people know about what you do just because it's different? It's not different. It's evolutionary. It's not going forward. It's going back to where we came from. There should be a space for this. So I texted Mark and I'm like, we're pivoting. We're changing the company. We're now focusing on a booking tool that's available worldwide for experts in alternative spaces as well. So like, all the traditional spaces, they're great. Like, they can be there. But now we're welcoming, with like really open, spiritually led marketing messages, a space for the different. And Mark, being just amazing, was like, okay, we'll do it. Like, yes.
You got it.
And then as we massaged the idea, we realized we want to focus on moms. Our story was so painful. And I realized that my pain had to have a purpose. And that was when we laser focused. We wanted originally to do it for all women. And then we said, new moms, millennial moms, hugely underserviced group. People talk about women when they're single and they talk about babies when they're born. What happens to the woman who makes the baby? Where does she go? Why aren't we talking about her? So I was like, I'm on it. I'm going to talk about her. And then we built Lella, which was the pivot from Pretty Bird. So on-demand booking of virtual support services now because of lockdowns, but every topic from breastfeeding and nutrition and taking care of yourself as well as taking care of your baby. So that was the natural pivot. And then COVID lasted a really long time, and people started losing their jobs, and women started having to stay home because they can't watch their kid do their online schooling and have a real job. And that was where the idea for Mom Academy came on board. So it was always just following these whispers of what is the problem and how can we solve it? So really like pulling in my own empath and intuitive guidance into what we've done. And that's when Mom Academy was born. Like all the experts that are available for one-on-one services can be very cost prohibitive to moms who just don't have that in their budget. Like that $150 an hour price point. It's a lot for some families. It's unattainable for some families. But you know what's not unattainable is like the $39 course on Udemy where I can learn about like SEO or like Instagram strategy. Like why can I learn about color coding my website for $17, but I can't learn about how to navigate postpartum sexuality in some sort of healthy, supportive, female-led virtual course? Why do I not have access to that? Like, why am I stuck only like navigating keyboard heroes comments on my Facebook post or like reading a blog post that I don't know who it's sponsored by? So we took a hybrid of like, I really just want to create this connecting tool. And then I really just want to educate women. And I'm not the educator, like I'm not the expert. I just built the stage. And I said, like, on this stage, come you guys. And
now,
that's how I met you.
Would you say now, Mary?
I talk a lot. How are you even still engaged in this conversation? It's incredible.
Because what you're saying is potent medicine that the world needs to hear. It's impossible not to stay engaged.
Thanks, babe. Thanks.
Truly. Like you don't realize how impactful as a mom, as somebody who, like, I was a little bit opposite than you, right? Like I grew up where mental illness was around every single person that I knew, and I didn't have it. My mom had it, my sister had it. Like I grew up taking care of people with it. So when I had my children, I literally woke up after having my son and was like, am I okay? Should I be okay? Is this the moment that am I going to get depressed now because I had a baby? Like I don't, because I just thought there's got to be a moment in my life where I'm going to go, right? Because it's all I know.
Wow.
I would question, and even when I had a son who has oppositional defiance disorder, anxiety, depression, like he has had a really hard struggle in his life. And I was back in the caregiver role. I woke up every day and I'd be like, it was like Groundhog Day for me when he was at his peak, right? Like every day was the same. I'd open my eyes and I knew something was going to happen, but I would question, am I okay? Am I depressed? No, I'm not. Okay. So I can get up out of bed.
I adore you. I just adore you.
I adore you too.
To have that inner awareness to check in with yourself, you got that from outside of your family context. Like that's like some divine work coming in through the universe to you to say, like, you have work to do. You best not succumb to this shit. Like you check in with yourself and you check in with like the people in your head and you make sure that things are okay with all of them and that they're all happy because you have work to do. And I feel like my not dying when statistically on paper I should have died was the rudest awakening of you have work to do. Figure it the fuck out because this is going to destroy you, but you will not die.
Happy rebirth day.
Yeah. That whole, what is it, like Mark Twain or something, like the two most important days in your life are when you're born, then when you figure out why you're alive or something like that. And we all look for context, right? I had to turn my pain into a mission. I had to. I couldn't survive. I would never, like the learned helplessness around me in a country like Poland where they the mentality is still very strong victim, very strong, like, don't show emotion because it makes you dangerous and it makes you a liability. And if they see you weak, like, they will kill you. Like, this country has had the shit kicked out of it for so long that I began to understand where I've come from being here, and realizing that, like, it was an honor and a privilege to grow up how I did, trauma aside. I was given tools. I was given the realization that I'm an empath. I was given intellectual ability, but more importantly, emotional intelligence. Businesses are not about building businesses. Businesses are about building relationships. And then the relationships build the business. And when you're an empath, a harnessed, conscious empath, you're really good at people. And I am really good at people because I recognize so much of myself in them, and vice versa. And coming from like a very, sort of Buddhist, Southeast Asian, spiritual love for that context, how can you not love and admire somebody that you see yourself in? Like, the divine in me honors and recognizes the divine in you. Like, how can you not want to make shit happen when you connect with somebody and you look at them and you're like, I want to do everything and make everything happen and change everything with you. Like, empath in business, right?
Yep.
But you and I bonded over our trauma. Our first call, we met, and like 30 seconds later, we were like, this is the shit that happened to me. This is the shit that happened to me. Okay, but what are we doing about it? Like,
this is
that's
why I think too, like those moments of finding, because mine is like, I had to stop talking to Ethan, that role, that caregiver, that identity, that everything, right? And then to say, I'm not speaking to my own child, and be willing to face the persecution of other mothers who would, I really believe, were going to come to my door with pitchforks and be like, your son lived on the streets. He chose living on the streets versus, and this is because of what I went through. That's what launched me into my soul's calling, right? That's where My Kid Is Driving Me Crazy, my first book, to help moms who have children with mental illness, was born from. It's like, when we go through these moments, and it doesn't mean that everybody has to get to this place. If you're like, I don't want to have my false to God moment, please. You don't have to have necessarily, but there's an honoring and an awakening that occurs when you understand that grief holds a beautiful message for you to find yourself and to find God and to Goddess.
So you brought up two things that really touched me there. So number one, moms are viciously scary creatures when they're not happy with the decisions you've made about parenting your own family. I've never understood mom shaming. Like, I've never, the keyboard warriors with the comments and the, like, I nursed for a year, and I would ask about like figuring out how to latch, twins at the same time. And then the commentary about like, no, you should be making these choices and you're doing this wrong. And I prefer, I didn't ask for that. So I've read a lot about the ego of mothering and how it makes us feel more validated to give unsolicited advice. This is how I did it. That's not what this is about. So like the moms with the pitchforks, like that's, Avalon made the decision that's right for Avalon, and Avalon's strength is going to role model and give light to other moms who feel that they need that support and that strength to draw from to make their own difficult choices. These are difficult choices.
Yep.
I've recently begun sharing my own struggle. I've always shared my struggle openly. I don't think I've ever written it as viscerally, and particularly because the twins are coming up on 3 now, and I still feel this way. I still haven't bonded with them the way I would like to. So now these questions of like, what happens if they watch this one day? What happens if they read your posts about being unable to bond and the, traumatic births? Well, I mean, they're human too. We have a baby girl who is potentially going to have babies one day. And I would like her to know that like the midwife from Belize won't save you. And we have a baby boy who is maybe going to parent in one way or another. And I would like him to stand by his partner in whatever form they choose to create a family, and be cognizant and aware of the fact that this is a major life transition. Like, moms are warriors. Women who become parents are warriors. Maybe we should talk about that. So to align with other business leaders and figure out ways to I mean, we all have to earn a living, but if we can take the power that we have and make a living while making a difference, I mean, that shit changes the world. So
yes.
no
Yes,
accident.
right. And Mama Academy hasn't launched yet. Is this true?
Mom Academy is like going to launch any day. Yeah.
Perfect. So it is. So by the time this airs in about 4 weeks,
It'll be live.
we will be able to get a link for people to be able to find their way. So I think this was a really potent, important message, because it's not just empaths in business, it's mom empaths in business.
And that changes everything. That identity, I fought it for so long. I didn't want to be a mom. I didn't want to teach them the word mom. Like when they refer to me as mom, I said to Mark earlier today, like, who taught them that word? Like, I don't, he's like, if they had just learned your name, you would have just started hating your name. And I was like, and then I would have changed it. And then I would have totally screwed them up. Like, I'm still grappling to adjust. And, you know, I'm mentally well and successful, and I have all these cards stacked in my favor, and I'm struggling to bond. I'm struggling to get this identity. I've made an entire tech startup around giving a space for women to know that that's okay. You know, there is no bigger being an empath in business than taking your most raw and real story and using it to transform lives. Like, I'm literally sitting opposite a woman who's done exactly that. And like that's what changes the world.
I believe you're like, oh, so can I put you as a rebel parenting coach on Mama Academy? I was like, yes, you can, because that would be the descriptive that I guess I would use for myself as somebody who has raised very, like, and I'm just going to say this to end and to tie back into how people can connect with you, is that there comes a moment in the story where I don't give a rat's ass what other people think about my parenting, because my kids and I, that's the relationship that matters. Not what their biological parents think, what my parents think, nothing matters except that my kids feel and know that they can contact me to have conversations that they can't have anywhere else. They can contact me. Sometimes my kids call me and I don't try to fix them. I let them be in their pain because they just need to know it's okay. To be overwhelmed, or to be sad, or to be afraid, or to, you know, there's nothing to fix. You're not broken. This is good. You should feel this way. School is overwhelming. COVID is overwhelming. Your mom leaving you across country and then not being able to get on a plane to see you. Yeah, that fucking sucks.
So
you have every right to feel this way. And then they can just sit there for 20 minutes and cry or be. Right. And nobody, that's not taught, and nor is it acknowledged. And there's going to be a million people. So you get to a place that is right for you to be like, what matters is this. My heart to my kid's heart. And the rest is noise.
And like you said in every one of our chats, living the life that you're trying to inspire them to create for themselves. Because and this was your sentence in your Mom Academy description, the do as I say, not as I do parenting doesn't work anymore. We saw through it, and it left us having no footing. Like, who the fuck am I supposed to be in this life if I don't have a role model? Like, how can you be what you don't see? You can't. So to watch you have articulated that, and I mean, you've kept your children alive for much longer than I have. So I look to you with this like reverence and gratitude of like, oh, so if I like follow in your footsteps, statistically speaking, they will survive. Okay, I can do that.
It's like, it's so funny because they already, this is the funnest part, is you realize that they already have a contract that they made before they chose this human body to experience the life that they had to go to, even when it was challenging. Like, we can only do so much parenting. It's like I say to my 15-year-old, and this is my favorite, I'm like, you know, I used to say when they were growing up, you have to listen to me right now, but I want one day for you not to. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I know that I'm your parent. I have to keep you safe, but I actually don't want you to listen to me forever. Like, you need to know that you have to say, like, I don't want to do that. Right. Like, this whole, like, Oh yeah. We'll save it for the Academy. Everybody
Oh
needs
my
to press
gosh.
the link and go to the Academy. If you are a parent or if you know somebody who is a parent, and you also have Lela Academy, which is another form in which people can access information. So can you just let everybody know how to like find your field and how to get this information?
So Lela.co is our booking space, so they can go and search. So moms, caregivers, families of any formation can go to Lela and connect with experts that they want one-on-one support with. So if you're looking for a booking platform where you can contact anybody around the world, there's a personality recommendation engine built into the tech, which is really cool. So think of like a dating site that matches you with experts that are more like you. So if you're sort of crunchy, organic, granola, hippie, spiritual parenting, you're statistically going to be matched with experts who evoke that same ethos in life. That was really important to me. So that's Lela.co, where you can download the app to book the one-on-one services. And in the learning space, which is what you and I first met over, but momacademy.co is, you'll include the links. It's spelled a little bit uniquely, but it's, think of like Udemy, Masterclass, Thinkific, like where you go to learn life skills. We've just made that for moms. In like, you can learn lessons in like the 3 to 5 minutes that it takes you to pee. Like that's ultimately what we wanted to build. So, you know, yes, there are longer courses and commitments that you're able to use to really transform your life. But then if that's not where you're at right now, there's like 3 to 5 minute lessons from women around the world, you know, coming back to the campfire, where we weren't meant to parent alone. This is crazy. Like we were never meant to parent without multiple women's insight and support around us. That's what I built. I built that stage. And then now that stage is sitting, waiting for the powerful voices and the experts and the passionaries to come and fill it.
I love you. I'm so grateful that the universe brought you together and that you found yourself in Poland.
Crazy, right? And in the contrast, no, you have transformed my life. I mean, I say to you, I send my love to you daily, asking like, is this weird that I'm still thinking about you? Like, you are just the most powerful human. And like, I bow in the presence of rebel unicorns, and you showed up. And now the universe has even more potential, potent potential for us. So
well, thank you.
I'm grateful. I'm honored.
Hearing that, because it just, I receive it with the divine love of your energy attached to that, which is what makes it so potent as well. So yay. And so everybody get to Mama Academy, go check out Lela.co, and you will see me there and Mary there and more information. And this is just getting started. So tune in on Monday, where I will actually talk about being a mom empath in business. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Avalon.
Wow, that episode was mind-blowing. I hope you had as many ahas listening to it as I had recording it. I would love to see the Rebel Unicorns podcast spread far and wide across the globe, across the universe. So if you want to share it on your social media with something that you found impactful, leave a review, send it to a friend. It would be so deeply appreciated. Also, a little side note, I did recently change my name. I downloaded 1.5 years ago that my name was Avalon Starlight. It was previously my birth name was Tamara Arnold. And if you're interested in learning what your Rebel Unicorn house is, oh yeah, there's a quiz for that. Think Harry Potter, except you're sorted into how you are impacting the world with your Stardust and what energy you're here to shift and change. You can find out your Rebel Unicorn house at www.tamaraarnold.ca/quiz. Let me know, tag me in social media, send the quiz out, and join the Rebel Unicorns Facebook group to be in a community of like-minded spiritual entrepreneurs who understand that when you shift your energy, you transform your business.